This is a free webinar that I'm happy to share with folks called the No BS Guide to Better Relationships for Men. And a little bit about why, I'm doing this or why, my background and why I feel as though I am qualified to do this. So there's a couple of things. One, I have studied men masculinity for almost 30 years, went to graduate school looking at it, wrote some books about it, some treatment curricula as well. Um, and I think the other thing is that there are some men and even women out there right now who are talking about men and men's relationships, and I just don't agree with what they're saying. And I'm not saying mine is right, and I'm not saying mine is better, but it's certainly different. It's certainly a different interpretation. And you'll see that as I go through the rest of this presentation. And I'll point it out at certain times as well. But I think the fundamental question is like, still, so many men are asking, why do relationships feel so hard? And my belief is that it has a lot to do with gender conditioning, is that the way we have been taught to be men from the very beginning as boys, the way we've been taught this is that these rules that we've been taught, these man rules that I have used for years, some people talk about the man box. I talk about the man rules because I think it's important to stress that these are internalized rules that we put upon ourselves and others to follow. But so many of these rules make connection difficult. And so we'll talk about some of the myths behind these rules, the power of them, and more than anything, I'm going to offer you an opportunity to have some new skills and some new tools to use in your relationships. So here's the first thing, right? So you have the man rules versus the relationship rules. And this I have found fascinating, right? So I did my graduate work on the social construction of masculinity. I discovered this phenomenon of the man rules and then therapy and recovery and kind of how they are contradictory to one another. And then as I started exploring that more and talking to people about it, I found that it's the exact same almost with relationships. What I mean by that is how we're conditioned as men is toward disconnection. And so, what's valued and needed in a healthy relationship is actually what we are moved away from, discouraged from doing for years and years and years. And so, like, what's happening with a lot of young guys these days is they don't even know why they're struggling so much in their relationships because they're saying like I'm not a guy like my father was. I don't subscribe to a lot of this stuff, but it's in you. It's in you. You've internalized these ideas, and I would have said I don't follow these man rules. I don't adhere to this. I want to be vulnerable. I don't ask for help. Don't be vulnerable. All this sort of stuff, right? These right here, don't feel, don't ask, don't need, don't lose. That's just some, right? Don't ask for help. Don't be vulnerable. Always win. You know, don't cry. That's like one of the biggest, period. But these are the man rules. These are the water that we swim in. And I would have told you, I don't follow this. But you put me in a stressful situation. You put me in a deep, powerful, stressful situation where I am getting triggered, where my old childhood wounds are coming up. And it is amazing how quickly I can take on that kind of reactive masculinity. It's not who I want to be as a man, but I show up that way. And it's fascinating. But at the same time, it's not just fascinating, it creates disconnection with others, with self, and in the community as well. right? So we have these rules, right? I said the don't cry rule. When I do this exercise, asking the audience, when I'm at conferences speaking, when I do this exercise, don't cry is the first rule that comes up almost all the time, right? And then don't feel. And then don't ask, don't speak up, right? But think about all of these man rules, and we can name more of them, but then think about what's needed for a healthy relationship and see how contradictory they are, right? How the tension, there is a psychological tension that exists for so many of us. And the challenge that we don't realize is how it's in us. We don't realize how much of it we've internalized. Then we get stressed and we're in an intimate situation and something comes up. And wow, before we know it, we're going back to our default, which is uglier sometimes than we thought, or at least as non relational, more non relational than we thought. And that's one of the challenges, right? So you have these man rules and you have internalized them. The degree to which you've internalized them can vary, right? But we've all got them. If you identify as a man, you got them. In fact, if you identify as a woman or just a human being, you've internalized these because they're too big, they're too present in our society. They're the water we swim in, right? So, what does this do to our relationships? Creates disconnection, as I talked about. It creates confusion. I mean, that was like a massive experience for me. Here I am. I think I'm a nice guy. I'm a good guy. I'm not like my father, frankly. And yet, I am acting exactly like my father in this relationship. How is that even possible? So, confusion, shame came up. And then it was like, I can't talk to anybody about this. I'm ashamed about it. And then it kept that kind of disconnection and that, unhealthy behaviors continuing in the relationship. Created resentment toward myself, resentment toward my partner. And ultimately, it leads to loneliness in the relationship, loneliness because men don't have necessarily other men that they can talk to or that they are talking to or that they're telling the whole truth to. And so there's that, but then there's the loneliness in the relationship with their partner because soon you become roommates watching Netflix with the occasional, as a friend of mine calls it, hallway sex, which is where you pass each other in the hallway saying, fuck you. So it is tough. Relationships can be hard. Relationships are hard not because of the relationships themselves, but because of our history, because of what we bring into them. Add the gender conditioning on top of that as an additional layer, and it can be very, very powerful and very, again, confusing. So, what I want to do in this brief webinar is offer some tips and some tools that you can use. So, the first is the shift. The first shift that I want to encourage people to do is moving from avoiding conflict to building connection with your partner. So, one, stop managing problems. Okay. That's one of the man rules. Be a problem solver, be a fixer, fix everything, right? Those are the man rules. When it comes to doing shit around the house, great, be a fixer. When it comes to working and being a manager and doing all that stuff, great, then do that. But if you're going to apply those same tactics to your relationship, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. It's not that it might work, it is not going to work. So, how do you stop managing problems, start building relationships? And it begins with awareness that you're doing it, awareness that you're constantly doing any number of things to fix, to fix, to fix. Or maybe you've decided it can't be fixed, and that can be part of the problem too. And we could do any number of things. So from fixing to understanding, that's the next shift, right? First, you listen like there's something to learn. What does that mean? You listen to your partner like there is something to learn. And then let me tell you, this is golden, okay? Do you want me to fix this? Do you want me to fix this or hear this? And another way of saying that is, are you wanting feedback or are you just wanting to share? Are you looking for some feedback or were you just looking to vent? Do you want me to help you solve this or do you just want me to listen? Are you tired of dealing with this and are you looking for just somebody to just fix it for you? And maybe that's your role. But see, the problem is that we forget that our presence matters more than any solution that we have to offer. And that's a big deal, right? Just be present. Just listen to what your partner's saying. And if you're already at a point in the relationship where your partner has stopped talking to you, that's a problem because that's what relationships are, talking and communicating and sharing. But if it's so full of resentment, so full of other stuff, then there's not going to be a lot of generosity in the listening and the sharing, which goes to shift number three, from defensiveness to responsibility. What does that mean? Well, again, that question that I just shared with you, it's gold. This next piece is probably even better than gold, right? Because it's a pause. It's the pause before acting. See, what happens that not a lot of people understand, you're getting into it with your partner. You are getting triggered. You're starting to escalate. And what is literally happening is that your thinking brain is starting to shut down and be overridden by your emotional brain. And when you're in your emotional brain, you are in a fight or flight place and you are in a reactive place and you go to your trauma responses. And your trauma response might be to fight, your trauma response might be to flee, your trauma response might be to fawn, and your trauma response might be to freeze. But any of those, right, can happen before you even know it. So the pause is just like, oh, I can feel it in my body. I can feel myself getting upset. I'm going to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Rest, right? Breathe in for 4. Hold for 7. Breathe out for 8. Whatever. There's so many configurations of different breathing that you can do. The point is that you do something, some kind of pause before reacting. Because if you're reacting in your relationship, which it's so easy to do, and the longer you're together, the more you get those patterns and the more you just react before you even realize that you're doing it. So the pause is everything. And if you need to step away and simply say, whoa, I can really feel myself being triggered right now, and I can hear you getting upset, I'm going to just turn around and I'm going to go just take a breather. I'll be back in a little bit. Pause, pause, pause. Then in the moment, later, you own your part, not the whole thing, but you own your part. You don't decide what is their part. You don't have to tell them that piece, but you just own your part. Hey, you know what? I was getting upset. I raised my voice. I'm sorry. I was critical. I'm sorry. I said I would be home by this time because I know you needed to do this or that, and I wasn't home. I'm sorry. You clean it up. What do you need from me? Is there anything I'm missing? What would you like me to hear? How this affected you? And that responsibility, it builds trust. And let me tell you, you can you can be in a relationship that feels like it is broken or breaking, and you can start doing these things to repair it. And that is a beautiful thing. It takes work, and you gotta kind of get through some resentment, and that means like some things coming out sideways even while you're trying to do it. But if it's two steps forward and one step back, that's a damn good thing. So that leads to what women actually want from men. If you know me, then you know that this slide is a little bit tongue in cheek. Why? Because none of these three could you also say that men want from women or men just want and women want. This is what people want in relationships. This is where I differ from a lot of people. Okay. Yes, I know like women need this and women need that, and men need this and men need that. But the truth is, when we can cut through and notice a lot of the gender conditioning that affects us, we all want the same thing. We want our partners to be present. We want emotional honesty. We want repair after conflict. Do women want this more than men? I don't know. Is it fair to say that women want this from men? Yes, it is. And if you were to prioritize these three things in your relationship with women, if you were in an intimate relationship with a woman and you were to prioritize these presence, right? Being present, turning the TV off, turning the phone off, and being present. Emotional honesty. We're going to talk about emotional honesty in a second, and you'll kind of get a sense of like what that really is. And then the repair after conflict, man, that's everything. The repair is everything. Conflict is inevitable. If you think you're going to be in a meaningful, healthy relationship without conflict, that says more about some stuff from your childhood than it says anything about reality. Because any relationship worth having is going to have some conflict. And it's the repair after the conflict that is absolutely essential. So, what do men need and deserve? Safety. Safe. We talk all the time about women's safety and women needing to feel safe. And of course, it's critical. Guess what is equally critical? Men's safety. Men feeling safe enough to be vulnerable, having a space to grow, getting support, not criticism. Men can so easily feel criticized by their partner, so easily feel as though they're getting something, from their partner. But then again, what woman doesn't want this, right? So, are there behaviors? This is what I want to make clear. Are there behaviors that we want to target when we are looking to build intimacy and connection with a woman? Yes, there probably are. And the three that I just mentioned are important. But are they only important to women? No. Are there behaviors we want to target and focus on and prioritize when it comes to men's needs in a relationship? Yes. Are they only important to men? No. So that's the difference, right? That's the difference but there is value in understanding like how men have been raised disposes us toward certain kinds of behaviors and thoughts and certain kinds of ways of being in relationship. And that when we take those into consideration, we are going to prioritize certain aspects of behavior. And it's the same thing with women. Women have been conditioned and socialized to do their stuff, and so we can take that into consideration as well. So the skill that changes everything is repair. Okay. I just talked about that. I'm just going to repeat it. Relationships aren't about getting it right. They're about repairing when we don't. There will always be conflict. It will always be imperfect. We're always going to make mistakes. We are self-centered human beings. We are selfish human beings. We want what we want. We want to be right. We think we're right. And then once the emotion starts coming up, and once we start bringing with it our childhood wounds and our past childhood stuff, then our mind clouds. Our mind clouds. And that means we're likely to make a mistake. We're likely to stop seeing our partner as our partner, but somebody else. And we're likely to not treat them in the nicest, kindest way. And guess what? And then we repair. We repair when we do that. And when we repair, it strengthens connection. And that is a beautiful thing. So that leads us to some tools. Okay. So here's just some tools that I really want to encourage anybody watching this, man, woman, however you identify, just here are some tools that you can use that I really don't think have anything to do with gender, but boy, can they make a difference. The relational check in. You gotta check in with each other. You could Google it, you could do a little chat GPT or some other AI thing and say, hey, give me the structure for an awesome couples check in. And you could keep it simple. Good friends of ours, my wife's and mine, 35 years married. Every week they have done a check in for 30 years. And that check in consists of one person sharing, the other person listening, and then the person kind of just saying back what they heard. The person who's sharing, there's no indictments or accusations, anything mean or anything at any point. If the person who is sharing does that, the person listening can say that feels critical or that feels like it's crossing the line. Can you not say that? Now, if your relationship already has so much tension and resentment or whatever that you can't do that simple exercise, that's a challenge, right? That's a challenge. And then that's where couples counseling and other professional help can come in. And couples counseling is good no matter what. If you have a good couples counselor, it's good no matter what, right? Because none of us really got the tools we needed or the guidance that we needed. But you have that relational check-in. And that's one version. Like I said, there's so many out there, but you make it a point to just regularly be checking in about how the relationship is. The next one is, and this is particularly for men, what's it really about? From the moment we were born, literally, we have been shut off from our emotions. I use this example of a toolbox, 64 crayons. Like it's like as human beings, we are born with a box of 64 crayons, and it's all those amazing colors, and people just start taking them out, right? All of the colors, the fear and the insecurity and the this and the that, the hurts and sadness. And then we're left with like just some shades of red, right? And so the idea is men get into a relationship, women want them to be emotionally honest, want them to have emotional clarity. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. When did I have that? When did I learn how to do that? How am I going to know how to do that? And a lot of guys really overestimate what it takes to develop this. So the shortcut is to just keep it simple and just look at the core feelings: mad, sad, glad, ashamed, afraid, and hurt. And anytime something's coming up with you find one of those six, just one of those six. And what you can't hide behind is mad, because mad is very often a secondary emotion, right? And so there's other feelings underneath mad. That is the one thing that I really encourage people to do, right? Is to, if you say, I'm really feeling mad, you're making me so mad. layer down, drop down, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, what else might I be feeling? And chances are it's afraid or hurt or sad, right? Maybe even shame. But that's huge, right? Is men beginning to practice emotional clarity over and over and over and over. The more you practice it, the more you can do it. I still remember the very first time I told my wife that my feelings were hurt. Long into my marriage and long into when I was already doing this work professionally and pontificating and talking about it and all that stuff. And I said, wow, I said, that hurt my feelings. I really feel hurt. And it felt so vulnerable, but it was a lot better because it was the truth. It was honest. Because that's what emotional clarity is about. It's about telling the truth. You feel afraid? You feel afraid. You feel hurt? You feel hurt. It doesn't mean anything. The problem in our society is we've made it mean something about gender. Real men don't feel afraid. Real men don't feel hurt. Well, guess what? Men feel hurt and afraid every freaking day and stuff it and hide it and then turn it into anger or smiling or whatever their go-to is for emotional suppression. There's the zones of intimacy. What are the zones of intimacy? Physical, emotional, spiritual, and then just our daily life. So one of the things you can do is you can sit down with your partner and you can rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our physical intimacy? Scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our emotional intimacy? Scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate our spiritual intimacy? And you go through it. You can add other zones as well. You could add intellectual, you could add psychological, recreational intimacy, and any number of things. But what's really powerful, like when you do the scores, is like you really get to see each other's reality. And that is super powerful. Honoring and respecting each other's reality. And then it creates a discussion. One person rates the physical intimacy as a 8 or a 9. One person rates it as a 2 or 3. One person rates the emotional intimacy as a 2 or a 3, and the other person rates it as an 8 or a 9, or a 6 or a 7, or whatever. All of that, right? All of that is open for conversation, but then you begin to understand that intimacy is so much bigger than just, frankly, having sex, right? And as men, we are taught very early on that intimacy equals sex, but intimacy is so, so much bigger. And the more you can allow that, the better your relationship's going to be. I used to have this thing where, like, I would often initiate closeness or physical affection with my wife when I wanted sex. And it was frustrating for her. So we just developed a quick, simple thing, which is I go for a hug and I say, no agenda. I massage her back and I say, no agenda. Or I say hug and I have an agenda. And it's cute and we laugh, right? But that's part of it. And that leads us to the fourth tool, which is two truths. Two truths. In every relationship, there are at least two truths, right? There's probably 3 or 4 or 5, but there's your truth, their truth, and the truth, some people might say, but there's certainly just your truth and their truth. And both of those matter. Both of those need to be heard, both of those need to be respected. And sometimes it's the same as saying, hey, you know what? Okay, you're right. You're right. You're right. And I apologize. Or you just simply hear what they have to say, or you have your truth, but you don't need to express it. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Right? I got a text from a good friend last night, and he was going back and forth with his wife. And like he had all this stuff in his head about why she said this one thing that she said. And he really didn't need to do anything other than just say, thank you. But he decided that it was critical. He decided that she doesn't trust him. He decided this, this, this. That's all made up. It's all his interpretation. Could it be true? Sure. Yeah, it could be true. But what's it getting him reacting to that? What's he getting from that? That's the other part of it. When we begin to see each other's truths and begin to hear each other's truths in a relationship, it's very powerful, right? Because our truths they're not in a vacuum. They're inspired and informed by our history. And so that's another piece of it. So this was just a brief kind of overview of some of the stuff that I have to offer. What this webinar can't teach you, but I do have an online course that can and will. It's 6 weeks, deep practice of the shifts, communication tools you can use instantly, and relationship habits that stick. There's weekly live sessions with me, practical skills, real change, and that right there is the link where you can learn more. And here's the cool thing. Like, I really try to make sure there's a value added for everything people do in their interactions with me. And so when you go to this page, you'll see that there are courses. When you see the courses, guess what? You'll see options, and you can sign up on the list for one of the courses, and you'll get more tips free over a period of like 10, 12 weeks, and none of it requires you to sign up. There's just invitations to sign up on the course. And then there's also, now this is December 11th. And so for the rest of this month, we're doing a special of $99 for a 30-minute session with me. It's through the rest of the month as we gear up for the holidays. Holidays can be stressful. Holidays can be all kinds of stuff. So that's the Calendly to directly schedule with me. And then you just pay the $99 and get it right on my calendar. If you have any specific questions or need any additional support, this is a great option for you to kind of also get a feel for me and what it might look like to work with me more closely. So thank you for joining me, for all of you who came, and thank you also to those of you watching after the fact. Greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate your time, and I wish you wonderful experience in relationships